I got a patient. She had flown in from Texas. She apparently escaped human traffickers, and she had been with them for 10 years. I'll tell you a story. The first time in the Navy Hospital Corps that I realized how important psychiatry is, I worked at a clinic on what we call the green side of base. That was the Marine side. I worked in field section, but sometimes I was at the clinic like once a week. And on this particular day, I encountered a Marine that I had previously treated in the field. It was something that had to do with breaking down emotionally, but he seemed like he was all right. And I saw him and I said, "Hey, Marine, how you doing? How you feeling?" And he shows me his arm and he pulls his sleeve up, and there is a huge scar on his wrist. He tried to, I couldn't believe it. 19 years old, and I realized this is something I need to pay attention to. Story number 2, and this was unique. I'll just give you the skinny. He was an American citizen. He was a Marine. He completed boot camp. Now he was in the School of Infantry to learn his combat skills. His family, they lived somewhere in California. They were not citizens. He was giving half of his paycheck to them. Also, tragically, while at boot camp, one of his siblings committed suicide, and another sibling had been admitted to the hospital for something serious, and it was tearing him apart. The financial aspect was tearing him apart, and I noticed when it comes to mental health, financial, that sneaks up and can bite anybody. And he wanted to go home to console his family, but he was afraid to say anything because of their status. Now, in situations like this, as a corpsman, I have 2 paths that I can go. I can get him somebody in psychiatry, but the problem is, if you're a Marine and you go to psych for any reason, it can be a blemish on your record. And I'm not trying to sound callous, like there's a stigma, but there kind of is. And that's just the way it has to be if you really need a psychiatrist, because obviously your life is more important. But sometimes, and in this case I went this way, I can use the chaplain. Is this really a full-blown psych issue? The patient did not have suicidal or homicidal ideation. He, broke down in tears and he was very upset, and perhaps if he kept going on this track, things could escalate and get quite worse. But at this level, I felt I could use the chaplain services, which I did, and the chaplain I had at the time was amazing. He was a former corpsman and a former corpsman who had served with the Marines. And together, we first adjusted the pay for the Marines so that he could have more of his money. And we secured him the opportunity to go and visit his family, and it wasn't going to affect his training. He was going to get left back to a different unit, but we're talking like a couple of weeks. He was still going to be able to complete the School of Infantry, become the Marine he wants to be, and he wouldn't have this blemish on his record that he had to use psych for some reason. And again, if there was any doubt about this person's mental health, I would have no problem getting psych involved. But in this case, I made a judgment call, and it was the right one. But I thought he was an interesting case. I've got other stories, but I'm not going to reveal them all here. I got to make future videos. I'll tell you one more as a nurse. I got a patient. She had flown in from Texas. She apparently escaped human traffickers, and she had been with them for 10 years. When I got her, she had got off the plane and went to the police. She was in one of my treatment rooms, and this was a situation where, typically we have just one visitor per patient. We let the whole family come in. They were more than shocked. They probably thought that she was gone. She had been dead. I mean, we're talking about 10 years. And it turned out that she was sex trafficked for 10 years. And when I got her, she had suicidal ideation, and she was just not well. But that was my first time dealing with a patient who had escaped human trafficking, and sadly, she wouldn't be my last.